I bought a lake house to run away from city noise, and within a week some woman in pearls tried to tell me it didn't belong to me. I laughed at first, that nervous half-snort laugh people give when life hands them a script they didn't audition for. Then I realized she meant it, and everything turned into a very slow, very awkward war. I remember unpacking like a man, celebrating small victories, boxes like tiny triumphs, dust on my knees, sweat on my back, the pine smell drifting in from the water. 2 acres, a wraparound porch, a lake that sat there like a mirror. Someone forgot to touch up. No HOA, no petty committees, just me and the espresso machine waiting for power. I had left Boston, left the commuter trains, left the neighbor who judged recycling like it was a personality trait. I thought I had bought peace. Turns out I bought a battleground. She arrived like a punctuation mark. Black SUV window tint darker than my mood. Stepping out with a posture that said she had been born to give orders. White shirt pearls, a lanyard that shimmered like a little badge of entitlement. She didn't say hi. She stared like she was reading me and my packing peanuts and deciding I was the problem. "You can't move in here," she said, flat as roadkill. "This property is designated for community expansion under Whisper Heights Regional Development Initiative." I blinked. I tried to be polite. "Ma'am, I have the title, the survey." And she looked at me like I'd offered to pay in counterfeit smiles. She didn't flinch at my framed exemption certificate in the guest bathroom. She squared her jaw the way someone squares off before a chess move. "Ownership doesn't protect you from community obligations," she told me like I had missed a memo from the universe. She left with her heels crunching gravel like a declaration. I stood there on the porch with half an IKEA chair in my hands and felt the air change. That was my first real clue. Karen, let's call her Karen, wasn't some bored busybody. She had a plan, and me moving in was an inconvenient plot point. The first acts of sabotage were small, surgical. Lights flickered at night, always late, always short. Breakers. Nothing tripped. My smart fridge rebooted itself like it was on a coffee break. Then the outages got longer. I called Walt the electrician, who looked like he could solder a satellite with chewing gum. He crouched by the external box, cursed softly, and pointed to some looped cable with a foreign tag. "Someone rerouted your lines through a shut-off relay remotely triggered," he told me. Translation: someone could flip a switch and my entire system would go dark mid-heat, mid-server, mid-life. 2 days later, the kitchen faucet coughed up brown water and then almost nothing. A plumber traced it to an external valve at the county feed, manually closed, and someone had zip-tied a laminated notice to the pipe. "Temporary disconnection due to HOA infrastructure upgrade." The notice looked official enough to piss you off and silly enough to make you laugh, like finding a parking ticket from a fictional city. I drove to the municipal office. The clerk, Laura, looked at the notice and then at me and said, "That's not our logo, that's stock art." No permits, no scheduled work. Back at my mailbox, a manila envelope had been hand-delivered, a typed violation notice on HOA letterhead claiming my parcel was being reintegrated into Whisper Heights. Signed politely by Karen President. I read that letter 3 times. The phrase corrective integration rolled in my skull like a loose marble. This was retroactive annexation by paperwork, by intimidation, by little bureaucratic lies wrapped in the veneer of official-sounding language. Whoever thought they'd look up some obscure clause and find the truth had an enemy patience. Karen's strategy wasn't to win in court. It was attrition, make life so miserable you sell. So I started digging. You ever dig into a deed for sport and then find someone else's life story? Property records are a time capsule of human pettiness. The name that kept showing up was Richard Marlowe, the owner before the flip-a-man who had fought Whisper Heights and apparently won. I found court filings. Marlowe had accused the HOA of forged maps, falsified violations, coercion. The judge had issued a permanent injunction. The HOA legally couldn't touch his property. Richard vanished afterwards, sold the place quietly, and then I bought it. I tracked him down through an old blog post he wrote about painting your soul whatever color you want. He answered, gravel in his voice. "She's a python in pearls. She squeezes until people fold." He'd been through the same slow squeeze. He sent me files, spreadsheets, redlined emails, meeting transcripts, things lawyers put in boxes and forget to throw away. One document read, Reintegration Strategy Phase 3, and my parcel number was on the list. This stopped being local drama and became a full-on reveal. Karen wasn't protecting community standards. She was running a quiet campaign of consolidation, planting seeds to later sell parcels to developers, funneling HOA money through shell companies, building a lakeside retreat on the neighborhood dime. It was audacious, the kind of thing you half expect in a movie and not on a gravel road outside a watercolor lake. She escalated. One morning, a county inspector showed up, polite clipboard in hand, saying he was responding to an anonymous report about unauthorized construction. I walked him around, spread my survey maps like a picnic, pointed to the iron stakes in the ground. He scanned, nodded, and off the record said, "She's filed reports on parcels outside her jurisdiction before. We're logging it." That glance, that small admission, was the pivot. If she wanted me to look guilty, she needed evidence. So I gave her a target. I bought a goofy prefab shed off Craigslist, painted it an ugly beige intentionally, and set it right on the edge of the disputed line. I filled the area with suspicious stuff, buckets, fertilizer bags, a fake Wi-Fi antenna on the roof for suspense. Then I wired up cameras, 4 angles, cloud backup, motion detection, the whole paranoid production. She couldn't resist. At 2 in the morning, I watched the footage as she slipped through the brush in dark clothes, flashlight, sweatshirt on, like a scene from a bad spy novel. She circled the shed, jiggled handles, pulled out a spray bottle, and marked the corner with pink construction chalk, the exact kind used to flag violations. She even swiped one of my private property signs and stuffed it into her tote. I sent the footage to the county, to the sheriff, to planning, notarized statements and parcel maps attached. Then I uploaded a heavily redacted clip online to a small video site, no addresses, no names, just her on my property marking it. It spread through local corners of the internet like gossip at a bake sale. People loved it. People loathed it. An online forum thread titled something like, "This is why people hate HOAs," gathered steam. I didn't bait it. I let people react. Karen went nuclear in other ways. Signs sprouted up around the neighborhood. "Save our community, stop illegal development." They pointed people to a neat website with a stock photo of smiling neighbors and a manifesto about the duty to recover lost parcels. The domain looked legit. The testimonials looked real. The petition grew to hundreds of signatures. Flyers appeared in mailboxes with maps that sneered and expanded Whisper Heights' boundaries to include my plot as some disputed buffer zone. Neighbors started to come by, confused, worried. A woman knocked and asked if my shed had a permit. Older couples whispered at the edge of my driveway. I realized these people weren't villains. They were being recruited, manipulated. Karen had built an army out of concern, and concern hides a lot of ugly things when presented prettily. So I answered with basic things: facts, documents, clarity. I built a simple site. Free lakefront, no frills, just deeds, surveys, the Marlowe court ruling, time-stamped photos, and the camera stills of Karen's trespass. I sent a link to every nearby homeowner with a short message: "This is about property rights. Today it's me. Tomorrow it could be you." Responses trickled in, then poured. A retired principal offered to fact-check. A software engineer found that the Save Our Community site was registered to a private LLC tied to Karen. Someone dug up invoices showing HOA funds routed to unknown contractors. The tide began to shift. We formed a small, messy alliance. Richard came back into the picture, Alexis with her greenhouse problems, the Parkers with their torn mailbox. We compiled a dossier, budgets, maps, timelines, bank trails. We didn't shout. We laid it out like a spreadsheet of wrongdoing. We held a community forum, neutral space chairs set up, coffee lukewarm, and we showed people the paper trail. Some defended Karen, sure. But a surprising number of people started seeing the cracks. Legal actions followed: a civil suit, motions to freeze HOA disbursements, reports to county investigators. Someone leaked our report to the local paper. The headline read like a roast: HOA or cartel. Karen's world shrank fast. Quiet cruisers arrived at the HOA office one Monday, 2 officers, a county investigator, a federal fraud agent. They read charges that sounded like a buffet of felony nouns: forgery, wire fraud, impersonation, illegal use of community funds. She was handcuffed in her blue blazer mid-latte. Not cinematic, clinical, perfect. The HOA imploded. Board members tried to say they were duped. Audits didn't care for excuses. Some took plea deals, others faced indictments. Administrators stepped in, parcels were reviewed, fees refunded, forged, notices revoked. The county restored my title, my exemptions, the small pleasures of paperwork that actually mean something. I rebuilt the fence real steel this time, motion sensors, reinforced posts, and replaced the decoy shed with a legal boat dock. I hung up a tiny plaque, sovereign land, no HOA beyond this point. Reporters called, a few national blogs sniffed around, but I declined most of it. I didn't do any of this for clicks. I did it because the idea that someone could weaponize community rules to take land made my teeth ache. What ended up surprising me most wasn't the arrest or the dissolved board. It was the people who reached out afterwards, homeowners from other states with similar horror stories, retirees who had been quietly paying for decades of beautification, folks who'd been pressured to sell. So I turned my little site into an advocacy hub, resources, templates, contacts, a place where people could say, "This happened to me," and be believed. I still go out to the dock sometimes at dusk. The lake is the same glassy thing it was the first night I moved in Loons, calling a breeze that smells like nothing you can buy. I remember standing there barefoot, half an IKEA chair in my hands, thinking I'd miscalculated. Now when I look out, I think about how small bureaucracies can become empires if no one checks them. I think about how one woman in pearls thought she could own a whole narrative, and how a few papers, a camera, and some stubborn neighbors unraveled her. You ever wonder when someone in a tidy suit takes power with a smile and says it's for the community, who checks the checkers, who watches the watchers when they start padding their pockets with other people's dues? If you were me, would you have stayed silent, or would you have pulled the camera out and waited in the dark? Share your take. Tell me a time you pushed back or thought about it. If you've been in the crosshairs of quiet power, tell the story. Because the real thing that changed for me wasn't the arrest or the press, it was finding out I wasn't alone. And that for once felt like the peace I paid for.